Welcome, everyone. It's the Mike Tech Show, show number 926. Tonight, since it's Halloween, and happy Halloween, and I didn't even think about this to share a scary tech story if it wasn't from Tim, who sent me a message and said, you got a scary tech story lined up? Well, I do now for kicking off the show. And then I'm going to talk about browser extensions, some tricks that I found on installing an old piece of software for a client on Windows 11. And then I want to address Outlook Classic. So let's get started with the scary tech story. This is from a long, long time ago when I was a very young network engineer. I have graduated college and I am, I guess I'm in my late 20s and I'm working for a very large pharmaceutical company. Here's how large of a company. I was the CC mail administrator. And this is when even the word email was foreign to most people. I am now the administrator for 30,000 users worldwide. Okay? So let that sink in for a minute. And with CC Mail, let me describe the infrastructure a little bit because it was all IBM OS2 servers, IBM LAN server, and it wasn't Ethernet connections. They were IBM token ring with MALs. That's the terminology. And some of you are old enough that are like, oh my, Mike, you're bringing up some pretty scary technology. Yes. And with anybody who knows LAN server, IBM OS2, the scripting language was called REX, REXX. Now, being the administrator, one of the things I hated was once a week doing the maintenance on the email servers for the company. And this was just for the people in the large building in Center City, Philadelphia. And it was the manual maintenance for those servers. There were other people around the world that would do different maintenance, where we had in King of Prussia, Hubamer, and then we had Hub Euro in the UK and Hub Asia in Japan. And this was just literally hubs of multiple servers routing mail within the company. So I had to do maintenance, and there was 6 servers servicing the people at the corporate headquarters. And for some reason, I don't know why, I would never do this ever again as long as I live, but I had no control over this. All of the executives for the company were on one server. Yes, that's right. Every executive was on one server. And then everybody else was divided across the other 5 servers. Now, I was tasked with automating the weekly maintenance where we would just have to watch it and monitor. And anybody who knows CC Mail and has been involved, I'm going to really bring up a nightmare of the terms checkstat and reclaim. These are the commands that from the command line that you would use to do maintenance on a server. Now, one of the things you really have to do before you perform maintenance on a server is to take the database and copy it to another location. Then you perform the checkstat reclaim, and then it copies back. You copy back the database that had the maintenance, but that's at a different location. So you see how it's already getting complex, just me explaining it. So first I got to make a safety copy, then perform the maintenance. Now, our regular backups, which were regular cassette tapes that would go into the DAT drives on the IBM servers, well, they would back up every night. But those backups took a long time and didn't happen until after this weekly maintenance. And it was Wednesday night, because I'll never forget that Wednesday nights were nights I did not sleep. I would work half the night, whatever, get home, barely get sleep for an hour or two, and then have to be dressed and back in by 7 a.m. Yes, there was no time off. I call this my boot camp, my introduction to enterprise networking at its worst and at its finest. I learned valuable lessons, but what I really learned was what not to do, how not to set up a server room, how not to set up servers that I inherited, how to handle everything. This was a tremendous education. So the first night of testing my scripts, which, by the way, I had a test server and I tested, but in production, things can go wrong. You can get an error. And if you don't have now remember, I'm not a real programmer, so I'm just doing a basic script of the commands that I need to execute. What happens if there's an error and it fails? And what happens if you are doing the maintenance and your script has an error, but you don't have any error checking in that script, and it keeps going and it doesn't do the maintenance? But what it does is it copies the previous Wednesday's database over top of the production database of the executive server that hosts all of the executives in the company. So this is my nightmare. And when I seen what was going on, and I had not executed it on the other servers, but of course, this is another thing. Why did I start with the server that has all the executives? Why would I do that? These are lessons you learn. And actually, it executed on another server too, and had the same problem. And now I have to explain. I got to call up the network manager and explain what happened, and that the database was overwritten. There's no way. I mean, I tried a lot of things to try to recover, but the only real option was to restore from a backup from the night before. And I was able to successfully restore the database. And now you have to explain, my boss has to explain to the senior executives of this very large pharmaceutical company that their mail for that day is gone forever. And I'll never forget, I'm in a cube in front of, it's got a wall, that if I'm sitting down, you can't see me, but you can hear. And to hear an executive vice president because I told the truth. I called my boss at home. I explained what happened. I threw myself on the sword and explained, what we're doing, and I'm recovering from the night before, and then I'll test. And it was not a happy conversation, but what was really bad was how my boss threw me under the bus, not helping at all, just covered his butt, threw me under the bus. And it was the first time ever in my life that there was a written reprimand in my personnel file for the mistake. And I was, let's say 6 months later, I couldn't wait to get out of there and go to a different company, and which was another healthcare company. And that's when I cut my teeth on Exchange Server, on the next company. Lots of lessons here that you no matter how scary it gets, and this was pretty scary. This was even thinking about this now from my past. It was pretty horrifying. Think of a young network engineer, decades ago. I'm trying to think, like almost 40 years ago, think about that. This is the 80s, where email, the word, just literally, no one even knew what the what's that funny @ symbol, and I'm managing that and gaining a tremendous amount of experience. And it's also my introduction to change control. And there was a whole new process of change control that was introduced in this organization due to what happened with me. And I actually led that charge, where you can't apply changes without going through testing and having someone else test. And it actually got funding for a larger test environment, which was another problem. We didn't have a lot to work with for testing because, you got to have money allocated for servers that replicate and duplicate your production infrastructure. So it brought up a lot of things, change control processes. It brought up a bigger budget for testing, and then also having the proper training before just thrusting and forcing someone to write a script in something they're not familiar with, which was me, learning Rex. And then there was too much pressure on trying to make it happen and less pressure on the testing. And this is where the foundation, all of this, I turned into a positive influence, because it helped me become a better manager when I was a manager, because I learned to do the exact opposite of how my manager handled that. I did the complete opposite. I learned to train your people first more. Make sure you have the budget to do the testing, or you don't do it. And making sure that all changes have the proper backup plan to where there's no chance of failure. Or if it does fail, you got a great backup plan in place. So one of the things that came from that was every copy of there was multiple scripts where nothing would continue. So the first script was to kick off to just make the copy, and that had to be verified. And when the copy was verified, then I was able to run the maintenance script. So rather than automating everything, I took it into sections, and then got a hold of somebody that could test if something was an error, to then, do this, if error, go to here, so to speak. And then I had it, and everything went on. But that was a pretty terrible night that I had to suffer through, losing all of the executives' email for one day. And that was pretty bad. So that is my true, from the heart, scary tech story. Probably one of the biggest problems that I ever had, that I was the culprit, where it was my fault when I was doing it. But if you're ever in a situation like that, it's the lessons that you learn, that you take from those scary stories, from all of those problems, and we learn from them, and you build different processes now, and what did you learn from it? And it's why when I interview anybody, one of the biggest questions I would always ask is, I want to know, what is the most horrible thing that happened? And what I'm looking for is the description, and it comes right out because it's on the tip of their brain, and it brings up horrible memories. I want to know what they learned from it, though. I don't ask that. I expect in the answer, this is how I grew, this is how I developed. And there were multiple candidates along the way when I was in a position to interview that when they couldn't come up with a horrible story, you're no good to me. I need network engineers that had some pain and suffering and then moved on from that. So I want to hear it. And that was one of I couldn't believe how many people, and they had done something stupid or a problem, or stuck the wrong RAM in and blew up a motherboard or something. I want to hear the pain, the anguish, and then how you dealt with it and what you learned. You could have dealt with it foolishly, but then you thought about it later and you learned. And keep that in mind if you're ever interviewing and you ever get that question. Be honest. Dig deep for a story and then the lessons. What did you learn? How did you grow? Because we can't grow if we don't make mistakes. So I use that as a launching pad for becoming a better network engineer. So that's the positive stuff that came from it. But it was a pretty horrible time for me back then. All right, that's the scary story. And now what I want to do is, I have a lot of links. I mean, a tremendous amount of links that are going to go on or within the show notes for tonight. So let's start out with the different browser add-ins. Now, I mentioned last week the uBlock Origin, and one of the things that I think is very, very important is being able to block the ads and some of the other junk that comes up. And we're going to go over two right now. One is the uBlock Origin, but here's one that I just learned about, and it's called Ghostery. And this is, really popular, and it's to prevent pop-ups and to really protect your privacy, and not just pop-ups, but threats and blocking ads. And I don't mind having ads for websites that's how they fund themselves. That's how they get paid. I get it. I understand that. But if you're just throwing so much junk, and I hate when someone sends me a link and it's just riddled with ads. I mean, I hate that. So we got Ghostery, we got uBlock Origin, and this is an add-in that I have fell in love with, and it is called Dark Reader. This is a great browser add-in that I've added to all my browsers, and you can easily turn it off and on. You can actually customize it per website. You can have it dark for every website, or maybe some websites, hey, they don't look so good in the dark. Like, here's the example on the front page here, Wikipedia. Maybe turn it off for Wikipedia. Or here we got to filter dark, light, the brightness, the contrast. Very cool. I really like it. The link I have, You can add it to Safari, Chrome, Edge, Firefox. I highly, highly, highly recommend this, as all the ones I'm going to discuss here tonight. So, very cool. Take a look at that. Here's one, and it's called OneTab. Now, what OneTab does, and you see the little on the screen, there's a little funnel, and that funnel is when you click it, it gives you an option to add all of the massive amount of tabs into a very nicely formatted page where each link is in a row. So if you're one of those people that has 20, 30 tabs open and it's a mess and you can't find anything, this is the add-in for you. It's called OneTab, and with one click, you can quickly make everything listed. And I only invoke him when I got a tremendous amount of tabs open. So, pretty cool. Pretty cool. Let's see. Here is the next one, and it's called Behind the Overlay. How many times do you get this overlay that pops up and you want to get to the content on the page behind it? This is what you want. And it will block. I noticed probably a 60 to 70% success rate, because there are some, I guess, overlays that have happened that it didn't block. So I was, I was kind of disappointed on some of the sites, but it does work for most of the sites. So pretty cool. Excuse me. Okay. Big one here. This is Evernote Web Clipper. Since I live in Evernote, I have to have Web Clipper because it will easily allow me to add what I'm reading, a note, a website, some kind of reference, and you get a nice menu where I can add the whole page, add the note, and just save the clip, and it'll save it right to Evernote. So that's very important to me. All right. So they are the browser extensions. And I know I've done a show, and I wanted to make sure, I don't think I've talked about some of these. And I wanted to just make sure some of the browser extensions, check them out. It really can make your life easier. You can it really increase your productivity. So definitely check that out. All right. I was asked this week to get and it's my handyman in person who's done a lot of work for me here. He had something I needed him to do for the shower, and he said, "Mike, can I bring my laptop and a program that he only has on CD?" So he brings his newer Dell laptop that's Windows 11, and on the CD, it's Microsoft Picture It 7.0. Now, I don't even know if this is going to install. So I said, no problem. I said, I put the CD in my CD player. I have a fresh USB stick, and I copy it, which took forever to just copy the contents of that. Once I got the copy, I put he was long gone by then. He finished his stuff. He said, "Look, I'll call you, or let me know when it's done. I'll stop back later and pick it up." And I said, "Yeah, no problem." So I put the stick in, and here's the interesting thing. It would go halfway to do the install, and it would stop on trying to install Internet Explorer 6. And there was no way to continue. It would literally stop, and I was like, boy, that doesn't make sense. So I start Googling, and how can I install Microsoft Picture It on Windows 11? And let me tell you, I found the perfect YouTube video, And this is well worth the 9 minutes. That's all it'll take. And it's how to install Picture It on Windows 11. And he goes through. And here is the secret sauce on what makes this work. You have to download the classic task manager. And during the install, he tells you what files, when that error first comes up, you leave it on the screen. And you go to the classic task manager and you end the tree for the MSIE, what's trying to do the IE install. And you kill those sessions for that program. And there'll be 3 of them for this particular install. And I was able to kill them, and then the error messages go away, actually, because there's 2 that would pop up. And now you go directly to the directory because it did install at that point. And you go and you launch the program, and it came up, but it came up slow, and that's something he noticed in the video. So he goes, and now for executing the program, go to compatibility mode and pick run as Windows 7. So now, doing that in compatibility mode, the thing just launches and works beautiful. That process I wanted to share, because if you ever have a client that they have this old software and it's not compatible, it won't work. Well, you got some things to try. And that's what I wanted to arm you with, which is the classic task manager. And then also you got that compatibility mode, remember, for an icon that you can say, hey, run as administrator, run as Windows XP. Matter of fact, I have a client that has a system that the software can only run on XP, and running in compatibility mode as XP actually lets that program work and performs incredible. Okay. One of the things I am very dismayed with is the new systems that I'm getting from Dell have Microsoft 365 installed to where all you got to do is like add the proper license person and their email and password if they have a legitimate license, and now you don't have to go through reinstalling. Well, yes, you do, sort of, or at least that's what I thought. And I quickly uninstalled everything because they only had Outlook New. Now remember, Outlook New has problems. It doesn't work with an Exchange server that's not Microsoft. I don't get it. I'll never understand that. So you have to have the Outlook Classic. And I thought in order to get that, I had to uninstall everything. But I've since learned that you can download just the Outlook 365 Classic. And I will have a link in the show notes for that very download. So you can download just the Classic and set that up, and then you can uninstall Outlook New. And we've been doing that for lots of clients that are in this situation. Because we have a lot of ShareWeb users and for email. And with ShareWeb, that is a they're Exchange servers, but because they're not the company Microsoft, you can't set up an account for them. So which is utterly ridiculous that you can't set up a profile for that. Plus, I know I've talked about it. There are lots of other problems that have just lots of problems. Okay. So now we have a client that the user has no desktop or laptop. They only have an iPhone and only for an iPad, and they have email that they need to convert from one email system, an email account, to another one. So, and this is a doctor who it was informed the university that he taught at and is no longer with, that his alumni account and is not going to be available anymore, and he has all of his email and he needs that converted to his new email that he's been using. So what I'm going to have my son do is take his laptop and use Outlook Classic and set up a profile, get it, making sure all of his email comes down, and then setting up, I believe it's just Gmail, so it's IMAP. So then setting up the IMAP and then using Outlook to just drag and drop, move everything up to the, or down, wherever, however it's where it's located, but setting it up and then letting it sync to the new email, and then everything should be there. And when he refreshes on his iPhone or his iPad for the new email account, all the old stuff from the old one should all be there. So I just wanted to share that I've already got the solution in my head, and that's going to be on Tuesday of next week. We got so many things happening and just so much work, which is great. And today I had multiple Zoom calls on a client move because there are so many monkey wrenches thrown into the mix here that, of course, that we had to discuss and had to take care of. So I had multiple calls with different vendors, and now we're thinking about, we were told Verizon wasn't available. Don't believe anything verbally. Run it through, Verizon Fios was available for that building. And now my client, we have to find out what kind of a contract they are with Comcast. And for the new site, I wanted to fire it up with Verizon Business Fios. And they can also save a ton of money that from what they're paying for Comcast, and greater speed and reliability. So that's one of the things we're going to see if we can get that in time. So that's it. And if let's see, I'm trying to think of, no, I think that's it. If you have any stories, any extensions that are must have for you, email me, MikeTechShow@gmail.com. Don't forget to visit the website, MikeTechShow.com. It'll flip you to MikeNation.net, but that's where every show is listed and all of the show notes. So as I'm talking about them or showing them, you don't have to take notes. I did that already. And I go through that painfully as everybody watches. We go through that painfully when I'm putting the show notes together on WordPress on the website. So that's it. Also, you got Mike Nation. You got YouTube for the videos, and that's Michael Smith MTS. Don't forget, click subscribe for me. And while you're at it, if you learned something from this and you're like, took something away from it and it helped you out, hey, the best way to show your appreciation, donation button on the website. Greatly appreciate everything. That's it. Next week, there's not going to be a show on the 7th. The show on the 7th, I believe I'm going to be at a hockey game. So so I figured, let me already schedule the next show to be Saturday the 9th. Now, it's funny, that night I have a concert for Here Comes the Mummies in Clearwater. And I have my ticket and can't wait to see that group. And that's sort of a funk jazz rock genre. And they're all dressed as mummies. Figured I'd mention that for Halloween here. I'm going to do the show at 2 o'clock. So next show, November 9th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And that's it. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.